You're welcome to the Policy Council. My name is Opeyemi Agbaje. Today I talked to a social activist, an activist as we've come to know them, but one who came from excellent qualifications in business and development and has made some impact with our organization. It's called Enough is Enough. I talked with the executive director. Enjoy the program. You're welcome back. It's still the Policy Council, and I'm talking to an interesting lady, a graduate of Math and Economics from the University of Virginia, MSc in Development Studies from the London School of Economics, an MBA from Oxford Said Business School. And you would expect to find her in the banks or maybe the private equity firms or the United Nations or World Bank. But she leads an organization which many Nigerians now know called Enough is Enough. My guest is Yemi Adamolekun. You're welcome to the Policy Council.
Thank you very much.
So Yemi, let's get to, first of all, what was the idea behind Enough is Enough? How did you...
We like to say Enough is Enough wasn't a planned organization. So 2010, President Yar'Adua was either alive or dead. We weren't sure. There was crisis in Jos. There were 4 queues. And funny enough, it was Mrs. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala who gave a keynote speech at an award ceremony in February of 2010. And I think for the first time put our demographic advantage in a way that we'd never thought of before. She said 70% of Nigerians are under 30. So for the change that we want, we have the demographic power to push it. A young gentleman called Chude, follow-up, then wrote an email titled, "Where is the outrage?" And his point at that time was the Wole Soyinkas of this world cannot continue to protest on our behalf, that where are young people, where are our thoughts on what's going on? So a protest was organized in Abuja in March of 2010, followed by another one in Lagos in April of 2010. And basically just to say young people are also angry. And it was unique in a number of ways. One, it wasn't a renter crowd. 2, it was full of professionals, celebrities. And one of the sort of remarkable moments for me, I think it was either Stella or Omotola who said that day that, look, regardless of how things are, she can actually afford to live, but it doesn't make any sense. And that's why she chose to come out. And after that, we basically just sat around and said, okay, every time we're upset, we can't really protest. What do we want to do?
When you say we, who are the we?
There were about 15 young people who had basically, the email thread. And after the email thread, okay, we protested, then what? Elections were going to be next year. And we thought, why don't we do something around elections? Since we have that demographic advantage, why don't we try and get young people engaged? And that's how we coined the phrase RSVP.
Register, select,
vote, and protect your vote.
Do you think eventually we did that in 2011?
I think we did a bit. I think, beyond maybe the 1993 elections, the number of participation across age brackets was actually quite massive in 2011. And according to INEC's records, probably 62% or so of those who registered were 18 to 35-year-olds, which was our demographic. So we thought we did make a difference.
Okay, excellent. But what most people associate Enough is Enough with, or at least I don't know if most people, was Occupy Nigeria. How did that link happen?
I think for us, so it was 2011, we started hearing the conversation that they might remove fuel subsidies. And we just started, we had probably a series of 5 meetings with different stakeholders and just trying to understand what the issues were. And we came away very clear that, yes, there was fundamental problems with subsidy regime. However, we thought it was very lazy of the government for the solution of it to be removal, given the fact that there were very other little social security benefits for Nigerians. The complaints were borders are porous, then protect your borders. People are corrupt, then send people to jail. For us, there were really clear things you could do. And yes, as a system, as a sector, there are challenges with the oil and gas sector. But the runaway was not just remove subsidies. Our point was, why don't you try and fix what the issues are and let the market regulate prices, not remove it and still benchmark prices. So we started our conversations and we actually started talking about if they actually did it, what would our response be? As a way of being proactive, we had actually invited Mrs. Okonjo-Iweala to a town hall meeting. And she had given us a tentative date of, I think, 3rd week in January. And then January 1. Subsidies were removed. And really quite spontaneously, people took to the streets. And for the first few days, it was just Nigerians protesting. And I think the role we wanted to play at that time was information. We wanted to be very clear around what this meant for individuals. So we had flyers that showed what it meant in terms of the cost of daily transportation, the cost of daily goods. And also wanted to drive the conversation around corruption and waste. So working with people like Budget drew attention of Nigerians online and actually in traditional media as well to actually paying attention to what all this means in terms of how our money gets spent. So we're spending ridiculous amounts of money on photocopying machines that we buy every 5 years. Why not cut waste in that area and give Nigerians a social security benefit in subsidies? Because it's something people directly feel. We don't have lights. So most offices are powered by fuel. So the subsidy, in a sense, is an indirect benefit to people who run businesses when they shouldn't have to worry about providing light to themselves. No light at homes, no light in the offices, but this is something Nigerians can feel. So that we're very clear about. But it's hard to have a conversation around saying, yes, subsidies are bad, but don't remove it. So we're very clear that, okay, we won't have that conversation, but we'll just focus on the fact that, yes, you are admitting there's corruption and waste in the sector, fix it, rather than take the easy route of removing subsidies.
Excellent. So I'm having this conversation with Yemi Adamolekun of Enough is Enough. We'll be right back. You welcome back to my conversation with Ms. Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough, Nigeria. And we're talking about Occupy Nigeria. Yemi, so clearly a group of you, young professionals, organized Enough is Enough, and then Occupy Nigeria happened. Let's take a retrospective view from your perspective of what happened in that period. What do you take away from that experience?
I think two things. On the part of Nigerians, I don't think we underestimated the amount of power that we had. I think it was sort of after the fact that people really realized that, wow, we were really onto something, and the fact that people had consistently come out every day to show their sort of dissatisfaction was very powerful. Let me say three things. Two, even though we tried, the attempt to politicize the issue was quite clear. So it became, Mr. President still referred to it a few weeks ago that people protested because they were being fed rice or whatever it was that he said on pure water.
Was there any basis in your view to his
people did donate. As an organization, people called me and said, look, we really support what you're doing. We can't, what can we do? Some woman called and said, I manufacture pure water. Can I bring pure water? But she was doing it because she realized people wanted to come. She felt it was her donation. I say absolutely nothing wrong. But people were not on the street because they were cajoled because of pure water. Why would people walk? I know people who walked by for an hour and a half, 2 hours to join before people started saying, you know what, Ojota is a bit far. Let's do our own in our own community. And you had a few Falomo, I think places in Ikorodu, different communities, and the Festac. Obviously we can't walk from Festac to Ojota. So they had their own. So if people were really being induced, when people came because they were upset.
Because they were concerned with the issue.
And it affected their pockets at the end of the day. So a lot of people didn't understand what the issue was, and that's what we were trying to do. But for a lot of people, it just affected they knew it affected their life somehow, and they came out. And I think three, it showed a bit of the lack of leadership in sort of the CSO, non-governmental sort of the fourth realm, whatever we call it, sector of the country. Because at the end of the day, what happened on Monday, everything just fizzled.
Collapsed.
Exactly. And I think not understanding the power that we had, which was why we also went home on Friday when we shouldn't have. I think we should have maintained the momentum. And then on Monday, when the military came out, the fact that there wasn't sort of a strong response I think it's also a testament to the fact that people were not sponsored. If people were sponsored, then the control room would control what people happen. But because people came of their own free will, it was then sort of hard for one central person to now say, this is how we respond. Because at the end of the day, people then responded the way they wanted to respond. Some responded out of fear. Some just said, you know what, I'm tired. And a lot of people by Friday, in fairness, were already saying, look, I make my living every day. Yes, I support this, but this is hard for me. So based on that, by Monday, people's different answer points were quite different.
Let me take your final reflection on the substantive issue of oil
subsidy.
downstream sector deregulation. Put aside, and I totally agree with you, the government didn't have a lot of moral credibility because of corruption and misgovernance. The process itself was poorly managed because of the conversations that were ongoing and the abrupt announcement. So let's put that aside for a second. But on the substantive issue, what are your thoughts of
the sector needs to be deregulated, but you don't deregulate a sector by removing subsidy. What is the, I mean, for example, okay, we have 4 refineries that operate at about 20-something odd % capacity. Nobody has done anything about that in 15
years. They were
built
in
1970s or whatever it was. But every year we allocate turnaround maintenance money, which God knows where it goes to.
What we really need is private investors,
and just privatize
who will build refineries.
Not even build, the ones you have, privatize them. Because a lot of them, as I understand, are not that, if they were rejigged, let me use that word, they can still work.
Yeah.
Exactly. So why hold on to something that's inefficient, paying salaries and then claiming that there are issues?
If somebody argued that the constraint to investment in the sector is the existence of a subsidy, would you grant that any? For instance, I couldn't buy a privatized refinery if there's a subsidy in the market, except somebody is going to assure me that I can sell above the subsidy. Do you understand my drift? So
or that your whatever the price differences will be paid, which is the essence what a subsidy is.
Exactly.
So if there's a time frame to phase it out, of which the government commits to any private sector, as we are paying now, we shall continue to pay until at a certain point where the
But I would be worried from the policy point of view if government said to private investors, as we are paying now, we'll continue to pay.
And then tomorrow they decide they don't want to pay.
If 1 or 2, if they continue to pay, it will be a huge scam, almost as bad, because 2 people outside the public realm will be negotiating a payment.
What the payment is.
And you and I won't be there.
Okay, let's do this. So you privatize your refineries over a period of time, and you say let the market set prices. Now, as government, which is what they are doing technically with Shopee, you then try to put in the safety net, blah, blah, blah. But it needs to be well thought out. It was very clear that Shopee was someone just woke up one morning and said, what are we going to do? So to your point, if it's actually a genuine system of we want to do this and we want to help Nigerians, then there is a clear plan. Exactly.
Absolutely. Okay, let's take a short time out. We'll be right back with Yemi Adamolekun of Enough is Enough.
Government wants our city to become a mega modern city. And so, government is providing modern markets for us to carry out our business. Now, this requires money. So, we need to pay our taxes to help government to help us. I pay my taxes. I hope you've paid yours. I pay. Pay your tax. It's your civic responsibility. It's your duty. It's the law.
You're welcome back. It's still the Policy Council, and I'm talking to Yemi Adamolekun. She's been associated with KIND, the Kudirat Initiative for Democracy, and with Alder Consulting and all of that. And she has a background in development, finance, and business with qualifications from Oxford and London School of Economics. So she knows what she's doing. There can be a presumption about that. So Yemi, let me ask you, you are now involved, evidently, with Bring Back Our Girls.
Yes.
How does Bring Back Our Girls link with the mission of Enough is Enough?
Governance. I mean, the fact that almost 300 girls are missing today, as is day 60, and they're still not back, and there's still quite a bit of confusion. We spent 4 weeks debating how many of them are missing to start with. So for us, it points back to an issue of governance, to an issue of accountability. And as one of my ones said, it's a failure to be able to count. We can't count people. We can't count money. How can we count votes? And how do we then hold people accountable? So it's fundamentally really an issue of governance and accountability for us.
I'm developing a worried mindset about Bring Back Our Girls.
Okay.
And it's still a hypothesis for me, but I want to test this with you. Before 300 girls, 200 girls, whatever number of girls, 15,000 people were killed, including 47 boys in a federal government college. Burnt. Yep. After that, since 300 girls, whatever, were picked, at least 1,000 people have been killed. And it's debatable whether what's going on now, since Chibok cannot be described as ethnic cleansing, in my view. So is Bring Back Our Girls the right message, or is it a strategic distraction? Should the message be broader? That's my question.
Good question. I think, we've had people say either release our girls, then we had end terrorism now, or say no to terrorism. By saying bring back our girls, I'm not sure I'm saying yes to terrorism. But I think you're quite right. Even kidnapping or abducting girls, it's been going on 3-4 years.
Exactly.
The boys that died in Yobe, 20 girls were taken then. Since the girls have been abducted, another 20 supposedly have been taken. But I think one of the things that Mrs. Ezekwesili really captures very well is that focusing on a singular issue keeps people's minds focused, and also at the same time really just draws attention to the fundamental problem. Because everything that you've described boils down to an issue of governance, an issue of accountability. In the last 3-4 years, as we said, the number of people that have died, all we've said is numbers. 20 people died, 25 died, 34 today, 75 tomorrow, 94 tomorrow. At no point has the government of this country provided a list of anyone who has died in any of these things. So John Musa died, Amina died. And you know that they are human beings, they are Nigerians, they are citizens that we value their lives. Now, the focus on this 300 makes it important for us to draw attention to that. For the 300 or 276 now that the list has come out, they all have names. We know their names. They all have parents. We can identify their parents. So it makes it possible to focus on this issue of not just, yes, there is an issue of insurgency or terrorism, whatever we want to call it. But as a citizen of Nigeria, I'm looking at the response of my government to a situation of insecurity that affects me. A few weeks ago, bombs were detonated in Lagos. Abuja has been bombed 3 times. 2 weeks ago, they shut down Wuse Market. So there is a pattern of insecurity. But what this allows me to ask is, okay, with these girls as a focal point, how do we use how the government is responding? And they've responded absolutely woefully. You have spokespeople contradicting themselves. You have finger pointing along party lines. You have the National Assembly saying it's not their fault. They're not commander-in-chief, so they don't know anything. So it shows fundamentally what the issues are that then make it possible for all the things you've laid out to happen.
Absolutely, I agree. But isn't there a need for a focus on terrorism itself?
Yeah, but that's not my brief. I'm a citizen of Nigeria. The most I can say is I don't support terrorism and I encourage my government to fight it. And I say this when government propagandists have their field day about citizens and end terrorism. The girls were abducted on Monday, April 14. On April 15, the next day, Opeyemi Ezekwesili on Twitter said, you know what, citizens, why don't we crowdsource ideas? This thing is getting too bad. What are citizens' ideas of what can be done? Over 2 days, we had over 1,000 responses, which we distilled down into 10 key points, and we sent it to every major stakeholder, President of the Senate, Speaker of the House, Mr. President, NSA, CDS, everybody, that, look, these are ideas that citizens have around, and there's nothing rocket science about them. Follow the money. Terrorism is financed by cash. Financing our security apparatus. There's all these rumors that they don't have enough guns, that this, that. Okay, what are the issues? 1 trillion allocated in 2013. Where has the money gone? Are our men equipped to do the work we've sent them out to? I will not encourage a soldier to go out and fight people that are overly superiorly armed because it's a fundamental violation of their human rights. You're sending them out to be killed. But if you have the proper equipment, you have signed up for the army, then yes, do your work. But if you don't have the equipment, then I fully support those who don't want to die. We say local security governance. There have been successes recorded from Borno State's JTF. Okay, what can we learn from that? How do we structure that? How do we empower that? Conclusive prosecution. Every day, this person, APC is Boko Haram. This, but not even individuals. We're pointing fingers at politicians, at heads, at senators. Not one person has ever been booked, sent to jail, or convicted, yet we're saying you are Boko Haram. How does that make any sense? That's conclusive prosecution. Protocol of engagement with citizens. We had an issue, there are 10, but I'll just go through them briefly. We had a situation of a citizen who, I think it was when the SSS compound was broken into, a young man tweeted pictures that he saw. He was afraid, he wasn't sure what was going on. He was kept by the SSS for 11 days. So how does that encourage me if I have information to share, if I might be killed or arrested? So how do you engage citizens? Because at the end of the day, terrorism is also local. People know strangers when they walk into their neighborhood. People know people they don't know. So if citizens don't trust government to share information, then we're joking and saying we're going to solve this problem. Then another one, for example, immigration and citizens identification. NCC has done biometrics. Passport we have. Driver's license has biometrics. Voter INEC has biometrics. None of the databases are linked. Yet we're trying to track people and find out who's a stranger.
And most of the people in Borno, Yobe are not on
any of
these
these
databases.
Precisely. So how do we want to track people?
Let's take a short time out and we'll be right back. You're welcome back. It's my final segment with Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director of Enough is Enough, a graduate of Math and Economics. development studies from LSE, MBA from Oxford Said Business School, and executive director, like I said, of Enough is Enough. So Yemi, you were telling us 10 things citizens
could do,
recommended or could do.
I would recommend. Another thing was just respect for the dead, honoring, as I mentioned earlier, honoring people who've lost their lives. And then risk calculation. So what public spaces, what's the minimum package of security that a public park needs, that a school needs, to make sure that across the country that's also uniformly provided. Promotion of peace education. And then lastly, social welfare, especially for that region. Specific programs to educate and empower women, creation of job opportunities, and also literacy programs for literacy programs in that section of the country as well. So those were the things we highlighted. This is a document that came out a month ago.
Did you look at the fundamental problem? You hinted at it when you say literacy programs, but aren't we all failing to focus on the core issue of the lack of access to education in the North generally and in the Northeast in particular, which for me is probably the root cause of all of this?
Well, I think it's part of the recommendation in terms of social welfare, access to education. But I think that's not the only thing. Yes, but it's also been historic, though. The fact that the North lags behind the rest of the country in terms of education is not new.
Is it something that was imposed, or is it a choice?
It's almost a catch-22. Because if it sort of starts off with a structure, those who then are born and grow up in it, becomes almost a norm. So unless someone shows you an alternative, this is what's normal. Because I
recall Universal Primary Education, which was a federal government program under Obasanjo to redress that situation. Universal Basic Education, when Obasanjo came back. I remember policies in JAMB, in federal government colleges to provide uniform nomadic education, adult and vocation. So my question is, shouldn't we tell ourselves some hard truths about the leadership which has allowed millions of its people to basically stay illiterate and ignorant?
And I think that's also part of the challenge of a federation. So when it's convenient for us, we talk about that we're a federation, let every state do whatever they like. But at the same time, to the degree that we are a federation, we all pay by the brunt, exactly. And at what point do some things have to be insisted on regardless of what might be your preference, or what kind of policies can be put in place to make sure? But the language usually says exactly what you say. Well, it's their choice, but at the end of the day, all Nigerians are paying for it.
Back to Enough is Enough. How do you finance your activities? What do you do? How do you raise money?
Well, we've been primarily donor-funded, international donor-funded, though there are a few Nigerians that have supported over the years. And then this season, we're actually hosting a charity auction. We thought it would be nice to get Nigerians engaged and involved in the work that we do. And we got some of Nigerians' icons to donate their time that we're auctioning off. So Aliko Dangote gave us an hour of his time, Wole Soyinka, Fole Adiola, Kim Bilo Osage, Moabudu, and Ibukwan Woshika. And also Kelechi Amadi will be the renowned photographer. So it's just an opportunity, I guess, to get Nigerians involved. And we just thought it'll be fun. You can see we'll showcase the work that we've done, what we plan to do over the next 3-4 years. Really just focused on getting young people engaged in politics.
So what are your plans for the near term, first of all? 2015, beyond, for the longer term?
2015 was, a big plan for 2015 was try to get as many young people who are now eligible to vote participate in the process. Unfortunately, given the security situation in the country and the fact that INEC has staggered the registration process, it's made it very difficult to sort of coordinate that process. There are at least 10 million people who are now eligible to vote post-2011. And putting that in context, only 38 million people voted in the presidential elections in 2011. So the numbers and the potential are huge. But we'll still do the best that we can. So get more young people engaged, the ones that are registered, make sure they go out on election day and participate in the process. And for us, P is not just protecting your vote on election day, but it's also protecting your vote in the 4 years in between by staying engaged, asking questions. Let me ask you, INEC has staggered registration, and it seems, what I read is they're doing it on a regional basis. Well, no, it's staggered across the country. Okay. So they'll pick one country from the south-south, I mean, one state from the south-south, one from the north. If they're doing Adamawa State now, and half of the people have fled to Cameroon, and Borno, and Yobe, and Benue, and Plateau. It's and that's a challenge. I realize the challenge. But INEC is maintaining that they can have elections, they will have elections. But I think we're very silly to think that the elections will not, what is happening will not have disenfranchised some people. And I mean, that's the simple fact. that the 2015 elections has already started to disenfranchise people. Yeah.
So what's your future vision for Enough is Enough? Where do you see?
We hope we have to do less work because, I mean, if Nigeria functions the way it should, we'll have less work to do. And our joke is there's the hashtag a day. So if Nigeria is actually working, maybe we'll have a hashtag a year that will keep just one major issue that, I mean, as in developed countries, there's a focal issue that people rally around. We're working around cancer. I mean, in this country, cancer is as big as it is. People are dealing with more basic things. Cancer seems so far away, but those are the kind of things that, as societies develop, you work with the times in terms of issues you're working with, not free water for all. Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
We'll be right back. That was a very interesting discussion. Reconstructing Nigeria takes the work and the commitment of many groups of stakeholders in business, in government, in the academia, in the faith community, and indeed in the non-governmental sector, the civil society as it is called. Enough is Enough has made significant impact within a short time in helping to galvanize the energies of our people to focus our minds on important issues. Even if you agree or disagree with some of their positions, at the end of the day, we need more of that kind of societal-based action to galvanize development and to inspire our people to take the actions that are needed for national growth. I encourage the work they've done. I challenge many more Nigerians to see in what ways they can contribute, whether in terms of the economy or in terms of health or in terms of getting people to be better citizens. Whatever course you choose a course, live it, and inspire other people to join you. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.